Episode 4. A Father Beyond the Crown. William is 15, Harry is only 12. They are both dressed in black, with their heads bowed and their eyes fixed on the ground. They are walking together with Diana's father, grandfather, and brother. When they arrive at their destination, they will find a packed church. Everyone is there. Prime ministers and emissaries, nobles and well-known faces of music, fashion and entertainment. Pavarotti next to Sting, Tom Hanks next to Steven Spielberg, Donatella Versace next to George Michael. There is a young Hillary Clinton talking to Noura, Queen of Jordan. At their side, the King of Spain and the Japanese Empress. What is striking, however, is not so much this, but what happens out there, among ordinary people. 2.5 million people have arrived on the journey from Kensington Palace to Westminster Abbey to pay their last respects to the princess of the people. Yet, you don't hear a fly. Along those barriers, no one is able to utter a word. Those who do not have their gaze lost in space cry. Everyone cried that day, even the policeman. In this surreal atmosphere, all attention is focused on the two princes and their slow and solitary march. Harry taking each step forward with a bewildered look. William a little further forward, barely holding back the tears. No one knows for sure how the idea came about. Some say it was the two boys who wanted it. Some claim it was their grandfather, Prince Philip, who convinced them. The fact is that, in their most fragile moment, the two princes find themselves exposed to the pity of 2.5 billion people all over the world, practically a third of the planet, who observe them closely through the cameras, while they are called to hide their desperation and sadly follow their young mother's coffin, pulled by 6 black horses, amidst the dismayed crowd. 2 toy soldiers, forced into silent desperation, when in their heart they just wanted to be held by the hand. Years later, Harry would speak of an inhuman choice. William would describe that experience as one of the most traumatic events of his life. At their side, Charles is maintaining an extraordinary dignity, almost unexpected, after the ashes of a failed marriage and the scars of a media campaign that demolished him in the eyes of public opinion. Life changed ever since he received that bloody phone call in the middle of the night from Paris. Diana was respected with the highest honours, including the flag flying at half-mast at Buckingham Palace, which is a very rare privilege as it is usually to symbolise the death of a sovereign. Charles knows that now an even more difficult task will await him, that of protecting his children from the consequences of such a tragedy and being able to fulfill the duties of a father left alone. He also has another challenge, being the heir to the throne of England. All of this under constant public scrutiny. The premises are certainly not the best. The criticisms of public opinion, the rancour of the children against him, and even the suspicions of his involvement in the death of his ex-wife weighed on Charles' shoulders. But above all, the awareness that William and Harry were already collateral victims of a shattered marriage, raised in an unhappy home, in a constant succession of discussion and tears, of screams alternating with gloomy silences. A constant tension, amplified by media coverage that penetrated their every move or aspect of family life, inside and outside the walls of the house. A toxic atmosphere, to say the least. As Tiggy Leggy Burke defined it, for a long time the babysitter of the two princes, who saw in her the only way out, a sort of older sister with whom to let off steam playing football or climbing trees. While Diana was happy to devote herself entirely to the care of her children, Charles was regarded as a figure on the fringes of family life. Yet, despite his commitments, he has always played an active role in the education of the children. A good father, said Diana, attentive and considerate. an aspect that is not taken for granted for someone born and raised in the indifference of their parents. However, there was a substantial difference between the two. Diana wanted her 2 children to save a life outside the walls of Buckingham Palace, and she tried to give them the illusion of normality. She accompanied them to school on foot, without a chauffeur, like any other parent. She often took them to the movies, to go-karts, or to eat ice cream on the sly. She ordered McDonald's hamburgers with them, and then ate them on the sofa in front of the TV, watching trash programs. Faced with the weight of the situation, Diana responded with a search for lightness. "You can be as naughty as you want, as long as you don't get caught," she always said. Conversely, for Charles, it was impossible to separate his role as father from that of a future monarch. The dogmas of the court had to be respected, as well as its subtle balances. In his spare time, he took them fishing at Highgrove, to polo matches or hunting trips at Sandringham. He certainly didn't give up on passing his love for nature and open spaces to them, but he aimed for a more reflective, discreet, less pop, and decidedly more institutional education. In the aftermath of the accident under the Alma Tunnel, all of that changed. The royal family was faced with the daunting task of helping William and Harry to overcome mourning and manage the public emotion. Charles had to inherit the figure of Diana. He did it with the utmost commitment and dedication, starting with the first public gesture that saw the 3 princes left alone, the visit to the thousands of flowers and messages of condolence that had been left outside Buckingham Palace. It was the first time William and Harry realised the impact their mother had had on so many people's lives. It was a bittersweet moment, filled with sadness but also with pride. Charles decided to take a break from royal duties to be with his children, and took them to the places Diana loved best, from the streams of the Scottish estate of Balmoral to the ski slopes in Switzerland, up to the beaches of the Caribbean. But above all, Charles was honest with them. About Camilla, about the divorce, and the mourning that was tearing him apart. Charles, the son who grew up emotionally estranged from his parents, found himself to be a deeply empathetic father. Years later, in an interview with Vanity Fair, William spoke about how his father's openness and his emotions helped him deal with the pain. "My father has been through it too. He knows what pain is, and realises that you have to be able to express it in order to move forward." Despite the vacuum they were experiencing, Charles knew it was important for the 2 princes to continue pursuing their interests and hobbies. He encouraged William's love of sports and humanitarian work. At the same time, he continued to feed Harry's passion for music, taking him to concerts with his favourite bands, even when they weren't playing right on his doorstep, such as when he took him to Johannesburg, South Africa, to attend a Spice Girls concert. Charles's dedication bore fruit, even before the eyes of public opinion. The controversy over his relationship with Camilla gave way to the image of a single father adored by his children. At the end of 1998, he overtook Tony Blair in a BBC poll for Man of the Year. Over the years, the relationship with his eldest son William was proving all in line with the expectations of the court and public opinion. The heir was conscientious and confident, and despite his initial reluctance to appear in front of the cameras, also capable of showing off smiles and personality. A very royal and, at the same time, very human look. A magnetism that the tabloids attributed to the missing mother. However, with the spare Harry, things weren't exactly going smoothly, let's say. There wasn't a week in which young Harry didn't appear in the papers, dishevelled, dull-eyed, drunk, leaving some nightclub. Harry was not yet of age when articles began to circulate in newspapers about his excesses with alcohol and the use of marijuana, in an attempt, he will later confess in his memoir, to mask a trauma that remained evidently unresolved. Rather than deny the rumours, Charles, patron of numerous drug associations, took the news calmly, saying that mistakes indicated a process of growth. After that, he acted quickly. Charles arranged for Harry to visit a London rehabilitation clinic where he met recovering addicts. Opting for education over punishment was effective, and the short but sharp shock worked, at least for a while. It wasn't long, in fact, before Harry found himself once again at the centre of controversy, this time for pictures of a costume party. Harry was on the front page, clad in a Nazi uniform, complete with swastika sash. The immediate apology issued by Clarence House did not convince the public, and the newspapers questioned Charles's influence on his children and on the discipline they received away from the limelight. In response, Charles sent his son to meet the chief rabbi of Great Britain as a sign of respect and commitment to interreligious understanding and tolerance. Charles has always been concerned about involving William and Harry in his charity work, yet this aspect was relegated to the background for a long time, both by the press and by the children themselves. Public recognition came unexpected only many years later, during Harry's speech at his father's 70th birthday. Today I ask everyone to say a big thank you. It is from your example to implement the change that William and I draw inspiration. It was November 2018. 6 months had passed since the wedding between Harry and Meghan Markle. After years between lights and shadows, the relationship between Charles and his second son seemed to have finally taken the right path. Charles was among the most ardent supporters of the former American actress since her arrival at court. She, in turn, described her father-in-law as welcoming, affectionate, hard-working, kind and stable. A reassuring figure, so much so that she was accompanied by him to the altar. It was a triumph of emotion, and one of the most powerful images of that day. Daughter-in-law and father-in-law, arm in arm, to the tune of a gospel choir, a novelty for royal weddings, a sign of hope in a new, more inclusive, more multicultural monarchy. No one could have predicted that, just over a year later, those hopes would be shattered by the flight of the Dukes of Sussex to the United States. The avalanche of sensational declarations that were later declined to the sound of interviews, television series, and explosive pages mark a disagreement destined to remain irreconcilable. First, the accusations of racism against the eldest son Archie. Then, those for Charles's indifference in the face of requests for protection from press attacks, so serious as to push Meghan to think about suicide. Finally, perhaps the most serious accusation, and not entirely unlikely, that of having been used as pawns and bargaining chips for the press by other members of the royal family who were potentially worried that the new couple could eclipse the rest of the family. These revelations have split public opinion in two, causing debate which is destined to last a long time. One thing is certain: far from the media hype, the reason for Harry's breaking away have distant roots, which are obscure but never hidden. Escaping from his family is nothing more than the delayed detonation of an emotional baggage that Harry has been carrying inside him for 25 long years. The sudden death of his mother, the anger towards the paparazzi, and his resentment towards his father. A quarter of a century later, Harry has released all the despair, held back from the day when, at the age of 12, dressed in black, in front of the eyes of the world, he was forced to walk behind his mother's coffin. Today, however, William is no longer at his side. For the heir to the throne, just like for his father Charles, the subtle balances of the court must be respected, starting with his dogma: never complain, never explain.